Let's go with Matt, since we haven't heard from you yet.
It's like a feeding frenzy of political actors.
Since you share a lot of the same values and you have the same policy positions in general, I'm wondering about your priorities, because I think that's how we'll differentiate you. So if there were one piece of policy or legislation that you could work on, and that was the only thing that you could really champion in Congress, what would it be, and what would your specific imprint or vision, how would that affect you?
Well, I'll tell you quickly my top 3 priorities. 1, it's universal health care with a public option. 2, it's economic recovery. And 3rd, it's restoring some sense of justice and honor to our veterans aftercare system. So the first issue, creating universal health care with a public option. Like I said, I know what it's like to go the first 18 years of my life without health insurance. My mom is struggling to pay the rapidly rising premiums on her health insurance. And we're certainly afraid that she could lose it, especially in this kind of economy. So that would be my #1 issue. I think you can increase, you could expand S-chip. You could decrease the age at which folks could buy into Medicare. You could, for those who have pre-existing conditions, allow them to buy into Medicare as well. And then in the middle, you work on subsidies or tax credits to allow folks to have a public option to buy into the Medicare system.
I would answer similarly. I think the urgency when one of us gets elected is health care. And I agree with the administration and with Congressman Miller. I think we have to have universal health care. As a co-author of Sheila Kuehl's bills that unfortunately weren't signed by the governor, I am a co-author of Mark Leno's bill to provide for that. I do think long-term it's energy policy and infrastructure around energy that we have to change so we won't have the conflicts we've had in the Middle East and we can become independent with renewable energy. So those 2 things, and then lastly education and the future of future generations, their education, their preparedness for the workforce.
Well, I'm going to give the order, my priorities to you in a slightly different order, because I do think we're going to, under Obama, and many of you may have seen this press conference today, I do think we're going to address health care, and we're going to do that in the near future. And I do think we're, in California nation, going to move forward in energy. But I really think our long-term prosperity as a nation is tied to education. And if we don't fix our educational system, I think we're going to have a difficult time economically and paying for any of the programs that we value. You know, it's the only way we're going to be able to put the time and effort into the research we need to develop the technologies to really move in a smart way to alternative energies. It's the only way we're going to have a workforce that makes enough money that people can afford to feed their families and have health care and buy homes and achieve the American dream. You know, the president of Ireland, when Ireland was sort of the stepchild of Great Britain, and they did 2 things in Ireland to change the country. One is they implemented policies to attract business to Ireland, and the other thing they did is they invested heavily in education. So when they attracted the technology companies, they had the workforce to fill those jobs. And I think we need to have the same kind of imperative in this nation. We have to invest in the education of our children, because it's not just their future, it's our future. And I want to paraphrase President Kennedy. He said, a nation can progress no swifter than its growth in education. And I think that's truer today than it's ever been.
Interesting question, but I reject the question. I have no intention of going to Washington and working on one issue. I've never done that in my life, and I'm not about to do it now. I will tell you this, the first order of business is to get the economy back and to get the jobs back into this district and in the surrounding area and in California. Otherwise, not much of the rest of this is going to work. That has to be done immediately, and there's a great deal of work that needs to be done in monitoring and making sure that the stimulus programs actually work to the benefit of the working men and women of America, not just to the benefit of high and mighty and the Beltway bandits that are so common in Washington. The second thing, all of the other issues, they've been discussed here by my colleagues. Certainly the health care issue, I've made it very clear where I'm coming from on that. I know the health insurance industry, and I know that if they're in this game, they will continue to rip us off. I want them out of the game. They can provide a policy over the top, as we have in Medicare, but until they are out of this game, we're going to continue to see extraordinary expenses, and we're going to see many, many problems. Secondly, I've talked about the climate issues and the atmosphere, the change in the energy policy, all of that, and transportation and so forth, that are pertinent and critical to the district. I will work on all of these issues because I am not a person that does one thing at a time. All of these things need to be dealt with simultaneously.
Thank you. So, of the people standing here, has any of you not asked a question yet?
Some people say that life without violence is a human right. So I'd like to know how you all feel about violence against women. 1 in 4 women are abused. And second of all, the death penalty.
Okay, and I'm going to ask if you guys can be brief, and let's see if we can squeeze in one more question.
It is a serious problem throughout America. Certainly it's a serious problem in every community of California. How to deal with it at the federal level, there are many, many facets to this. Clearly, there are a need for laws that need to be strictly enforced. Secondly, we need to deal with the underlying causes of violence. Some of it is passed from family to, from father to son and down through the generations. That needs to be addressed. Mental health programs are extremely important in this. The level of stress that occurs as a result of the economic downturn is another factor. It's a multifaceted problem. We need the support systems for women that are abused. Those support systems are being decimated by the budget situations here in California and across the nation. So again, it's a multifaceted problem. You've got to work at all of the different areas in which the problem is presented and in which and from which it occurs.
Capital punishment.
In Contra Costa County, I've been a supporter for more than 2 decades of what used to be battered women's alternative and is now Stand Against Domestic Violence. And I don't think there's enough we can do to break the cycle of domestic violence, because we know that it hurts families, it hurts communities, and oftentimes it's silent. So I'm a supporter of everything we can do to support women and other people who are victims of domestic violence. With respect to the death penalty, I support the death penalty only in the instance where a public safety officer is murdered.
That's a great question. In local government, I was proud to be an author of a violence prevention plan in Contra Costa County that became a national model. It had to do with not just violence, but obviously gun control that we were very active on over there, that I continue to be in the legislature. I carried the Brady campaign's #1 bill last year, and I'm carrying 2 this year in regards to gun violence. We also started a zero tolerance for domestic violence program in Contra Costa. Similarly became a national model that we weren't going to tolerate any kind of domestic violence, and it's working. On capital punishment, like Joan, I support capital punishment in those rare instances when it's affected, when someone's taken the life of a public safety officer.
As the son of a single mother, I can certainly tell you that I have the absolute and utmost respect for women, and I think it is an absolute tragedy the amount of crime and violence that's committed towards women. As the Lieutenant Governor mentioned, during times of economic stress, that is exactly when we shouldn't be cutting services that help to combat this sort of violence in the home. And in terms of capital punishment, I think when it comes to taking a person's life, you need a perfect system in place. Humans are incapable of being perfect and without bias in terms of how they would, implement capital punishment. So I don't trust human nature when it comes to capital punishment.
I think we have 1 minute left, so I'm going to say that was it. And I want to thank all of our wonderful candidates. I'm very excited that we're going to have a wonderful representative from CD10. And perhaps some of us in this room will be working for 1 or more of you. And we'll see what happens. Not one of us working for several. But yeah.